Okay. In the last session we completed the additional setups which are required after submitting rapid implementation process. Of course, during this review of rapid implementation template based setups, also we created location for business unit. Okay, we'll add that point to here. Location for BU. Yep. Fine. Apart from RI template, we created a user. We have to create a user and we have to enable offerings and options, make sure geographies are imported by performing that action. When you complete the setup through rapid implementation, system is not going to create any locations for business unit since we don't have any provision to add location details within the RI template. Manually, we have to create an associate location for BU and create LDC, map LDC to LE, then create employee user. Done. Now we can start with the payables. So before we jump into payables, okay, so we'll just try to understand the primary balancing segment label. To understand primary balancing segment label, we'll create one transaction within the GL. Okay, we'll create one transaction within the GL so that we can understand, and also we'll get introduced to GL application very high level since we have basic setups ready which allows us to create the transaction within GL application. We are clear about natural account segment label. When we assign natural account segment label, system is going to add a few additional value attributes to account segment related values. Those are like additional. For every segment, you will get allow budgeting, allow posting, and summary. But when you assign natural account segment label to account segment, you will find additional 4 value attribute. Primary one is account type. Apart from account type, we have other types like we have reconcile, third party control account, financial category. These are the different value attributes we have. Those are facilitated by natural account segment label. When you assign natural account segment label, that label will add those additional attributes so that we can set the attribute as we require. But primary attribute is account type. For every account, we should set the nature of account. Now, when you talk about primary balancing segment label, how it is going to help in the system in terms of accounting. Okay, let's talk about primary balancing segment label. Very important point. When you assign primary balancing segment label to specific segment, what it will do is it will balance transactions. It will balance the transaction. Since the label is balancing segment label, it will balance. What it is going to balance? So when you talk about double accounting system, okay, or else double entry, okay, double entry accounting system, it says, take example, simple example, forget about this double entry accounting system, etc. If there is a seller, there should be a buyer also. If you are a buyer, there should be a seller. Means there should be counterparty. I am buying something. How can I buy if somebody is not selling? So if I am buying, somebody should be there to sell. I can call my seller as a counterparty. In the same way, in business, minimum there should be two parties, like to buy or sell. For one party, other party will become counterparty. If I am a supplier, I need a counterparty. My counterparty is customer to entertain what I'm doing. By just if I'm selling, by purchasing, they can entertain. That's how I can do the business. If I'm a buyer, I need a supplier. Okay, two parties are required. In the similar way, in the accounting, when you talk about double entry accounting system, if I'm buying, I have to record in the system what I'm buying. Then what action I'm going to take? What next action? I have to pay. If I pay, I'll record as a paid. If I'm not paying, I'll record as I will pay. Okay, I'm spending something, I purchase something, that means expense for me. Simple example, expense. I'm spending some money, I'm purchasing something, that will become expense for me. Okay, you spent expense. Have you paid? You have to write here. You have to make it clear. It's not like I spent, you don't talk about whether you paid or not. Doesn't make any sense. As per double entry accounting system, whatever activity you are doing, you have to track complete information. When you say complete, what you are doing, what is the further action, how it is going to result in the next step, what relevant action you take. I am spending expense, and if I pay, I have to say I paid cash. I spent expense, I paid cash. Very nice. Or else I spend expense, I don't want to pay cash now, I'm going to pay after 1 month. I would say up to 1 month. Okay, supplier allowed me as a credit. That means it is liability. We are due to supplier. So I have to record in my books as a liability. Liability. So this is how the double entry accounting system says. So if you do some activity and the corresponding activity also you have to record. If you spend some expense, okay, you spend some expense. Simply you cannot spend. Nobody is going to help you to supply some material without their interest. Their interest is you will make the payment. What about the payment? Have you paid or you are liable? You are taking on credit base. This is how, just one example I'm taking. In double entry accounting system, in every activity what you do in the business, there should be counter entry. Say you spend some expense. Okay. So your expense just you call as a debit. Okay. So the debit credit again we'll see the system also, you'll understand more detail level. The simple point you can take, it's a debit. Expense we spent, it is debit for us. Okay. Now what is the counter entry liability? Okay. This counter entry, okay, for every entry there should be counter entry. Don't take as liability only counter entry. Okay. Counter entry, or you can say offset entry. Offset entry, counter entry or offset entry. Here offset entry you can take as credit. Done. As per double entry accounting system, if you are performing any transaction, if you are recording any account in the system, there should be counter entry also. Or you can say offset entry, equivalent entry, which will support the first entry. Like if you say expense, what about expense? You spent expense is very clear. Have you paid? You are still liable. If you take example of sales, okay, you got revenue. Okay, when you do the sales activity, when you do some sales activity, so you are going to get revenue. So when you are getting the revenue, okay, here in case of a like spending expense, since you are purchasing, when you are selling, you will get the revenue. Whether you received the revenue or you are going to receive the revenue, that you have to record in the system again. Here you spent expense, okay, you spent expense. Have you paid or not? In case of sales, you will get the revenue. The revenue received or you are going to receive. That you have to record the counter entry. or offset entry we have to create as per double entry accounting system. If there is a debit, there should be credit also. Means which is a counter entry or offset entry, you can say. When we are recording this in the system as per double entry accounting system, if expense are incurred by company 1000, those should be liable to company 1000 only. It should be liable for company 1000 only. I'm not taking department account, etc. Account already we are talking about expense account, liability account. Okay. Or else you can say cash. Anything. Say you spent expense and you are paying the cash. You paid the cash. You have to record in your system. Spent expense, paid or not paid. That you have to record in the system. So expense for 1000, company 1000, then who has to pay? 1000 only should pay. So what primary balance and segment label will do is, as per our double entry accounting system, if you spend expense and whether you paid or not, you have to record who is spending expense 1000, and 1000 only will be responsible to pay whether paid or not. Against 1000 only we have to record that cash or liability account. It means the primary balancing segment label supports the double entry accounting system rule, which says the debit balancing segment value. Company means balancing segment value. Already we discussed. Company means balancing segment value. For debit, what are the company you are using? The same you have to use for credit line also. Your debit account, it could be any transaction, any application, doesn't matter. We are taking this simple example. You take payables, you take receivables, you take assets, you take project related application, accounting, any transaction, any accounting transaction you take as per a double entry accounting system, there should be counter entry or offset entry. Means for debit, whatever you are recording, there should be credit. Or else if you are recording credit entry, there should be equivalent debit entry for the same company. Now, company we are calling as a balancing segment value. That means in every transaction, when you record the accounting entries, the debits and credits what you enter, depending on the event what you perform, the balancing segment value should be same. I should not record like this. Yes, it may happen in the business sometimes. That comes under different transaction, intercompany. We are not talking about intercompany, internally what you do. Reality, okay. And there could be other scenarios also. Those all are exceptional. Okay. Very typical example, as per double entry accounting system, there should be debit and credit entries, two entries. And as per balancing segment rule, the debit company should be equal to credit company. Means every transaction need to be balanced with the same balancing segment value. If you record a transaction, yes, there will be one debit, one credit, because we follow double entry accounting system. So we don't record I spent expense. We don't record only I paid cash. No. If you record you paid cash, for what you paid cash, there is no clue. If you are recording accounting in your system, I spent expense, there is no clue whether you paid or you have to pay, right? You'll get into risk. So that is the reason there should be clarity. You spent, then what you did. Okay, you spent, paid or not paid. Okay, you paid. For what you paid, there should be clue for what you paid. That is reason to support this statement will support this statement will support this statement. So in the double entry accounting system, we'll have a debit and credit. So when we talk about primary balancing segment label, the primary balancing segment label will create one rule in every transaction. Okay, in every transaction, the debit, okay, the debit balancing segment value should be equal to credit balancing segment value. This rule it will establish in the system environment, so that in any application, if you are creating the transaction with 1000, okay, so it could be debit or credit, it will look for other line with the same. Okay, other line same. You may take credit as a 2000, debit as 3000. The primary balancing segment label won't allow to process the transaction with a different until unless we have that such kind of use case as internal transactions. By default, when we are dealing with your suppliers and customers, if you are not dealing with your suppliers and customer, it is something like internal activity. Maybe these all are possible. Expense can be incurred by one company, another company will take the responsibility or kind of adjustments internally. That's a different story. But in very standard process, when you deal with the suppliers and customers, always the same company will take the responsibility of spending and paying and selling and receiving the revenue. So this is the point we have to understand when you talk about primary balance and segment label. What it will do is, the first point is, in every transaction the debit and credit balance and segment value should be same. And apart from that, it will see whether debit amount is equal to credit amount. Say for example, you are entering 10k, 10,000, and it will have a eye on the amounts also. If you enter debit with the 10k, credit also should be 10k. If you say I spent expense, so I cash I paid 8k, okay, cash I paid 8k, and remaining you have to address with remaining 2k is liability. But if you are not making that credit as a C, here you may say cash is 8k, and what about 2000? That also you have to say liability. You are going to pay later. Liability 8k. Liability is 2k now. Cash is 2. Now total 10k. So total debit 10,000 and total credit. Credit here cash 8, liability 2, total 10. Now debit amount is equal to credit amount. Doesn't matter. You will be distributing that amount into how many accounts, but total debit amount should be equal to total credit amounts. Total debit account amount should be equal to total credit account amounts. And in every transaction, within the transaction, I'm not talking about across the transactions. Within the transaction, if you have one transaction, within the transaction for the debit and credit line, you have to use the same balancing segment value. Every debit should be equal to credit in terms of amount as well as the balancing segment value also. So that's all about primary balancing segment label. Okay. Now we are calling as a primary. In your company, what level you want to produce the reports? Okay, what level you want to produce the reports? So you want to produce uh, balance sheet. Okay, you want to produce the balance sheet, and you want to produce say income statement or profit and loss. Okay, P&L, profit and loss. So in balance sheet, which accounts will have? Will have accounts like assets, liabilities, and also will include ownership accounts. Means returned earnings balances account also will include in the balance sheet only. Okay, the owner's equity or ownership. Okay, so one side will take liability, other side will take assets. The ownership also will stand along with the liability. Income statement or P&L, you can call with any name. This naming convention we use internal purpose, external purpose point of view. You can use different names or you can use any name. Doesn't make big difference. When I talk about income statement, here we list out all our expense. One second. So one side will, will take all our revenues and will take all our expenses. We'll see total revenue and total expense. The variance only we call as returned earnings. Here, when we talk about this point in the balance sheet, okay. So one side will take liabilities, may take horizontally or vertically, doesn't matter how we segregate. Okay, the balance sheet. So we'll just find out, we'll list out all the liabilities and owner's equity, ownership account balances, other side assets, and we'll make sure it will get balanced. An income statement will take all the revenues, how much total revenue, how much we spent. The variance will treat as a positive means profit, negative means loss. So these statements, these reports we call as financial statements. Financial statements are financial reports. Okay, financial statements. Okay, we have another kind of report called as a TB, trial balance. Trial balance you don't call as a financial statement. Okay, when you say financial statement, balance sheet and income statement, or call it as a P&L, profit and loss accounting, gives profit or loss for us. Okay, if somebody is not aware of these, just spend what is a balance sheet in YouTube. Just you play one simple video. What is balance sheet? You spend 10-15 minutes. If required 30 minutes, you can spend. No need to spend too much of time. You allocate 1 hour time. Nothing wrong for balance sheet. Maybe 1 hour time for income statement and or profit and loss. You can go with any name. Both are same. And other one is okay, TB, trial balance. We call as simply TB. It means trial balance. It contains all account related summary of the balances, but it is not treated as a financial statement. For our understanding, okay, the guys who are attending the session, if somebody is not aware of what is balance sheet, what is income statement, so what is the trial balance, you can go through, but primarily you just go through these two. Just play the video. Spend 1 hour time for this two, and again get a flavor of what is a TB also. There is no too much of science in this to understand. It's a pretty straightforward and simple. One side you will maintain all your assets, other side you will maintain your liabilities and ownership in case of balance sheet. When you talk about income statement or profit and loss, both are same. One side you maintain your revenues, other side you will maintain your expense. The variance what you get, you call as a returned earnings. Okay, returned earnings, nothing but ownership. So here you will find the difference. That difference will be moving into your balance sheet. Okay, first you will prepare your income statement. You will figure out what is the variance. So maybe your revenue is 10 crores, your expense are 7 crores. The variance what you get, that you call as returned earnings. Okay, returned earnings. Now returned earnings is 3 crores. It's a positive or negative? It's a positive. If your revenue is 7, expense are 10, negative. That means loss. Now since positive, it's a gain. It's a gain. Now this 3 CR, you will be moving into balance sheet. Liabilities, you will list out. Along with the liabilities, you will list out this 3 CR. So that's how you have to move this amount from income statement to balance sheet. Before you prepare all these, the company will prepare TB, trial balance. They'll make sure everything is getting balanced, not only for these accounts, for all the type of accounts, irrespective of balance sheet accounts or income statement accounts. When you say balance sheet accounts, remember always liability account, asset account, ownership accounts. Okay, we call as balance sheet accounts. Income statement or P&L accounts, revenue, expense. That's it. When we are dealing with the clients, most of the time they'll be referring with this only. If you say some account is a balance sheet account or P&L account, if you are aware which accounts are part of P&L, which accounts are part of balance sheet. When you talk about TB, All type of accounts are part of DB. That will give complete summary of balances for all type of accounts in DB. But when you talk about balance sheet, only three type of accounts: liability, asset, and ownership. Owner's equity, or you can say. When you talk about income statement, two type of accounts: revenue and expense. Whatever we are going to record in our applications across the different applications, finally already we discussed as a part of P2P and O2C, all the data will flow into GL. From payables, data will come into GL. When you say payables, what you record in the payables? How much you are spending expense, how much liability you have. That's it. That means in payables, if you create invoice, expense account we use and liability account we use. That expense account will go to P&L and liability account will go to balance sheet. And if you create transaction in the receivables, in receivables, ideally the accounting entry would be basic entry: receivables debit, revenue credit. Just for basic understanding, when you are working, you will see receivables debit, revenue credit. So this, from this receivables transaction, revenue will go to P&L account, revenues P&L account, it will go to P&L financial statement. And receivables is nothing but asset. This will go to asset. See, in case of AP invoice, entry is simple and basic entry is expense debit, liability credit. If you are not from accounting background, just make a note, read and keep ready. That's it. You don't need to do anything. As I mentioned, just spend 1 hour time to understand these three terms through Google. That's YouTube. Okay. Search for what is balance sheet, what is P&L or income statement. Both are one only, different naming conventions. The other one is what is a TB. TB means trial balance. Okay. You don't need to worry about this much. You try to understand this too, then have a just look, just you can understand. Okay. This all will be part of this. That's it. AR transaction, or else say you can say AR invoice. So this expense account, it will go to your P&L. So you can say expenses P&L account, then you will become accountant when you say this. Okay, that's what accountants speak. Client also will talk to you, but they'll be always talking about this is a P&L account, that is a balance sheet account, this is a, that's it. There is no other signs. They will talk only those. P&L account, balance sheet account, P&L account. That's it. If you know this is simple signs, you also can speak with it. And liability account. Okay. So liability account always will go and sit in the balance sheet. The balance sheet, in the balance sheet, liabilities and ownership will take one side, assets will take another side. In income statement or P&L, one side will take revenue, other side will take expense. If it is a vertical, you can just take assets on top, liabilities and ownership bottom. If it is income statement in the vertical, not horizontal, vertical representation, revenue you take first, expense you take lower. Okay. So anyway, just we are going to segregate. We are going to separate them as a separate sets. That's it. If you talk about AP invoice, when you create invoice in the payables, so receivables we treat as a asset. It will go to balance sheet. Okay. The receivables is balance sheet account, you can say. And revenue, it will goes to P&L. When they prepare these reports, each account related balances should goes to specific report. Okay. Initially it will get stored. Then when they prepare the report, this is how they prepare. So any transaction or recording, there will be accounting entry, there will be specific account. That account will have a specific nature. The nature could be asset, liability, expense, revenue, or ownership. So accordingly, reports what you are preparing, all expense and revenue balances will take into income statement, and again those will be segregating. Total revenue how much, total expense how much, what is the variance, nothing but returned earnings, or you can say like net income also you can call. Okay, net income. You can call as a net income. If you call here net income, here also will be moving as a net income. If you call it as retained earnings, so the same will be moving here as retained earnings. Retained earnings is ownership account, ownership type of account. So this is what you have to understand. Now, you have to understand the company wants to prepare their reports, the income statement, balance sheet. You can consider TB. TB is not a financial statement, just it is kind of report which will give the complete picture of their account balances. That's all. Okay, simple point is when you talk to any client, the basic message you have to pass to them is in their language. Then what level you want to prepare your P&L and balance sheet, that we have to make as a primary balancing segment. That's it. Every company typically they prepare balance sheet and income statement or P&L company level. So since they want to prepare balance sheet and P&L company level, the company segment we make as a balancing segment by assigning primary balancing segment label. That's it. So this is what that's it. This is that much simple. There is no other science to understand. Only the task. If you are not from accounting background, just spend 1 hour to understand these two primarily. Along with this also you can spend. Okay. So maybe 30 minutes, 30 minutes. You give 10 minutes for this, then you will be good enough. Okay. Okay, you'll be good enough. I don't recommend go through some accounting standards, etc., etc. That will be some few guys it makes sense, few guys doesn't make sense. But you go through this. This is enough. Still, if anything is required, we'll discuss. Yeah, this is enough. This is enough. Just try to understand. So what contains already we discussed, but you will see some examples, some other kind of beautiful statements you may come across when you talk about this, so that in tomorrow it could be interview or general discussion. Somebody is talking about balance sheet, income statement. You may be core BTech background, you can talk about it. Hey, this is a balance sheet account. This is P&L account, right? You can just present. You are not. You are just you know very well accounting. Very simple. This is what uh, everything is aligned. Okay, fine. Spend 1 hour time to go through the relevant videos. It will you may get a little bit more exposure. But from our class point of view, this is enough for us to understand, to digest what does it mean by balancing balance sheet and income statement. TB means everything will be part of this with the summary balances. And hope now you got a clarity why we are using primary balance and segment label. If you assign primary balance and segment label, every transaction will be balanced. Okay. Now, if I'm going to prepare the report, if my expense and liability, or else here I'll take only liability for a simple understanding. Okay. So expense will go to income statement and liability will go to balance sheet. And when I'm preparing one report for company, I am preparing balance sheet for company 1,000, income statement also for 1,000. Now I should be able to see how much expense for 1,000. This 10,000 it should come here. I should be able to see for 1,000 in the balance sheet how much is liability. If I am giving 2,000 in my income statement, I will see 1,000 expense. But if I go to balance sheet for 1,000, I don't see this. Sorry, if I go to the 1,000 balance sheet, which I'm preparing for company 1,000, the 10,000 expense I can see, since I am recording with 1,000 only. If I go to balance sheet, which I'm preparing for company 1,000, there I don't see liability as a 10,000. Here liability it won't show 10,000. Reason, I just posted that liability to 2,000, which is utterly wrong. If I give 1,000, yes, I'll get the real picture. So 1,000, it's 1,000 is expense. Same time, you have still liability. Otherwise, it will give wrong picture. It says you have only expense, you don't have liabilities. There's reality you have liabilities, but you move to that. When you go to 2000, you will see only liability, you don't see expense. How come it became expense? Again, that is internal, that is a different story. But the real world, so if expense for one company, the same company, it should be liability or cash. You should pay cash. Okay, if it is a cash, okay, that it will go to instead of, if it is a liability, it will goes to liability. If it is a cash, it will come as a asset. Okay, it should reflect. It should reflect. If anything is reflecting in your income statement, say you spent expense, it could be liability or it could be cash. It should reflect in your balance sheet. Okay, you spent some expense. Okay, expense account is debit. Liability account is debiting. It will show in the liability side. Already you paid the cash. Okay, that's the cash you paid. Okay, if you receive the cash, that will become asset. I just mentioned the cash, it reflects, that's the you paid. That again, it won't come, it is as a asset, but when you spend expense, that is a liability you have to show. When you sell something, okay, it is asset for you. You have to show here as a asset. Okay, you have to show as asset, like which you are going to get and how much you are going to get, the revenue and all you have to represent here. So that means whenever you do some transaction, if any entry is getting passed here, the corresponding entries need to be updated. And if it is a liability, you will show here. If it is asset, you will show here. If you are recording any liability, that liability is because of which expense you have to record. If you are recording the asset, that asset is because of that, as asset you are getting what revenue. It may not be always revenue, it may be your fixed assets or bank balances, etc. Those all also we treat as assets. Okay, so that's what. If you go through that, just 1 hour, if you spend 1 hour time about balance sheet and the profit and loss, primarily along with that TB, you'll get a better understanding. But this picture will give you so how that structure is aligned with respect to accounts. Okay, this is a story of understanding the very basic concept of why Oracle introduced primary balance and segment label. If it is not there, anyone can record with anything. And it will become 5,000 and the system is not going to control, so that you cannot produce the reports at your company level. Company 1,000 level, if you want to produce, there should be proper counter entry. There should be counter entry so that then only you can understand for this company how much liability, or else for this company this much expense. You don't know the liability for the same company because you are posting the balances to different a company, right? So this is all about it. Yep. Fine. Okay. So this is a very, very important point you have to understand. Okay. So when we create the transactions in the system, what level you want to produce the financial statements. When you say financial statements, balance sheet and P&L, profit and loss account. These two. Apart from this, if you want to prepare cash flow statements or fund flow statements, those also you can prepare at balancing segment value level. Means cash flow means how cash is flowing. It could be inflow or outflow, how cash is coming into organizations. Very primarily cash will come into the organization because of your sales, and cash will flow out because of payments. Apart from that, there could be another activities which you do. This all you can represent through report, which we call as cash flow. Okay, cash flow statement and fund flow statements. There is no great difference, simple. This is majorly focused on the cash, which is resulted from your business transaction, sales and purchases, along with that, a few other cash related. Fund flow statements, apart from your sales and purchases, in other ways, how you are getting the funds into your organization. You might be taking the loans, etc., or else you might be funding in other companies, you might be investing in other companies, etc. That sort of picture, if you want to get, companies they'll prepare this data also. But these all like you can prepare once data is ready in the GL application, which is coming from different systems. So that's how it is. Any statement, any report, these two we call as financial statements. Okay. So TB doesn't comes under financial statement because that is summary of the complete account information. And yes, the cash flow and fund flow just to have a idea and to forecast and realize what is happening, how it is going, so that you can take better decisions and you can have a greater visibility. So to have a heads up, you can just prepare this report. So it's majorly focused on funds, I mean cash, which resulted because of your sales and purchases. This is along with that, it major focus would be on how the funds you are getting into organization, apart from customer paid and paid to suppliers. So those are these. Just you look into this. This is not required. If you have a time and if you love it, love to know this also, you can go through. Doesn't take much time. Yeah. So this is a story of okay, why we need primary balancing segment label. When you assign primary balancing segment label, that will play this entire game. Okay, this entire game that will become reason. If something you are not setting as a primary balancing segment, that values won't become balancing segment values. If you don't have balancing segment values, you don't have a balancing rule. Balancing rule means there is no rule like debit is not equal to credit. You don't need to make debit is as equal to credit. When that is not there, no reports you will get accurate information. It will become messy. So that's the reason Oracle brought this concept called as primary balancing segment label. Once you enable, it will ensure every transaction is getting balanced with the same balancing segment value. Debit e balance segment value equal to credit, and debit amounts are equal to credit. 2 points to try to understand why these two should get balanced, balance and segment value and amount, because you are going to use this data to prepare your financial reports, P&L and balance sheet. So those has to, if you are preparing the report for 1,000, the 1,000 related accurate data need to presented in the financial statements. So there should not be mismatch. That we have to ensure within the transaction. Within the transaction, it is a proper, then wherever you require, you can get the accurate data. So that's all about primary balancing segment label and the story, whatever we discussed. Any questions on this, please? Any questions from anyone, please? Sorry, I think it is something else. Yeah, you can unmute and you can raise your questions.
See, for example, if you post a journal or whatever a transaction with a liability account and expense account, as you mentioned, liability account is in balance sheet, expense account is income statement. So that expense, how the balance sheet will balance when two different accounts are sitting in two different statements.
Oh, no, no. Yeah. No, it will get balanced with your assets. Okay. And it will get balanced with this variance. From here, the variance will come, right? Your total liabilities should be equal to total assets. And if there is any variance, that should be your profit or loss.
Yeah.
That's it.
So for example, we posted a single transaction that is like what you are showing. So I know that liability directly sits in the account is in the balance sheet it is showing, and expense account goes into income statement. Then it comes into the balance sheet as part of retained earnings or what?
Yes, it will come like the expense and revenue variance. It will come here, or I'll see here. You have a liability 10,000. Okay, you have liability 10,000, and you have like assets maybe 25,000.
No, just consider this one single
No.
transaction only.
Anything,
I don't
anything.
want
You look at as the 10,000 only, no issues. But with that only one statement, you cannot make these entire statements, right? You have to consider many things. That is the reason I'm taking this example. See, when you talk about this entry, this where is your asset information? Then how you can figure out, right? So if you look at the balance sheet, okay, as per balance sheet, your liability is 10. Just think like the 10 is resulted from this only. Okay, but there should be some assets also for your organization, right? So how much is the variance? Okay, how much is variance? 15. The 15, it will be, you will be representing as a ownership. And again, here the calculation, from here the calculation should come. It is not like making it a standalone you can figure out. When you prepare income statement, that will post here, then we will list out all your liabilities, assets and all that would get balanced. That is the reason I just mentioned, you go through the videos, some other dots will get connected, so that you will see the clear picture of different liabilities, different assets, different expense, different revenues. Okay, but to understand what is a kind of formula here it is followed, what is a finance statement, income statement, or say P&L. So we are discussing. If you want to see the real figures and all, yes, go through some examples. That's how it is. It's not like standalone you will be able to make out. There is a dependence,
Okay.
right? That's how it is.
Okay.
Any other questions, please?
No, net profit or net loss will be transferred from the income statement, right?
Correct.
In
The
order
net
to-
profit or net loss itself you are calling as retained earnings, and
Yeah.
that will transfer to balance sheet
Okay.
as a ownership. You can write directly retained earnings here, nothing wrong. Just I'm giving the
Okay.
account type, so that because these types only we have in our system, right? That is the reason I'm giving. Yeah. Right. So this is what we have to understand why the primary balancing segment label. Now, just quickly, we'll just delve into the system to understand how the transactions can be created by following the primary balancing segment rule. What is the primary balancing segment rule? Every debit should be equal to credit balancing segment value. The debit balancing segment value should be equal to credit balancing segment value. That is one point. The second point, the debit amount should be equal to credit amount for the same balancing segment value. They are the 2 points. Then only you can produce meaningful reports. So that is the reason we are using the balancing segment in chart of accounts. Done. So fine. Now what we are going to do, if you want to record the transactions within the GL, we have to complete a few other tasks. So we are ready with all the setups, right? We loaded through rapid implementation. We are ready. So within the GL, if you want to record the transactions, we have a user called as LINC. This user need access to GL roles. Okay, for this user, from which user you want to create the transactions within the GL, you have to provide the provisioning. We have a role called as application implementation consultant role. That application implementation consultant role will give you the option to perform the setups, not to record the transaction. Make a note. You cannot record single transaction with application implementation consultant. The role is designed only for configuration purpose. For every application to record the transactions, Oracle given application specific roles. Okay, application specific roles which can be used by business to record the business transactions. So now we are talking about GL, and if you remember our P2P and O2C cycle, GL will get the data from all the applications. Okay, GL will get the data from all the applications, right? Reality, we don't record the transactions in the GL. Okay, we don't record the transactions in GL. GL always will get the data from other applications. Payables, you create invoices and you create the payments. The data will come to GL as a debit and credit entry with respect to balancing segment values and accounts, the debits, credits, and amounts. Okay. So we'll get data from subledger applications. We never record the transactions within the GL directly. Okay, GL always collects the data from subledger application, and within the GL only you can prepare the financial reports. So into GL, okay, one second, we'll go there. GL, so asset data will come from assets application and from receivables application, right? And also it will come from the bank account. assets, fixed assets, data will come. Cash is treated as a current asset, that data will come to GL. Bank account level and receivables, the revenue receivables account is treated as a cash asset, that also will come. Everything will come to GL. From all the applications, data will come to GL. In the GL, we'll prepare the financial reports. You see here, from all the applications, we are getting their data into GL. In GL, we'll prepare the financial reports. You'll have all account type related balances within GL. Generally, we don't use GL to record the transactions. Any transaction, if it is a business transaction, we can use like subledger applications, record, process in the more meaningful way, get the data into GL and produce the reports. Sometimes you may pass some adjustment entries. Take simple example. You have a GL. You are using SCM, okay, and finance and PPM from Oracle. This is from Oracle. From Oracle, you are using these 3 tracks for your client. But your client is using ADP payroll. It's from ADP company. Like Oracle, we have ADP. From ADP, the payroll system is very good. Now, if this ADP payroll system is integrated with your GL, only the payroll journal entries will come to GL. Payroll journal entries means your costing information, what you are paying to the employees, salaries. That journal entries will come to GL. Cool, there is no issue. If not, client is using ADP payroll, but that ADP payroll is not connected to Oracle GL. Okay, it is not connected to Oracle GL. OGL I am calling means Oracle GL, general ledger. It is not connected to OGL. But when we are going to prepare reports, we treat salaries as expense, right? When you prepare your P&L, salary is also your expense. Okay, salary is also your expense. When you prepare the P&L report, P&L statement in the GL, already you incurred some expenses. Okay, expense may be like 50 lakhs salaries you paid. 50 lakh salaries you paid, and or else you have to pay or pay whatever it may be the status you can take. 50 lakhs expense, you incurred expense for salaries. When you prepare the P&L, you prepare the P&L within the GL. Now this 50 lakhs won't be available within the GL. That is the reason. So this 50 lakhs salary related expenses you record through manual journal. Salaries debit 50 lakhs, maybe just cash credit 50 lakhs. You'll use the respective balance and segment value, maybe 1,000, 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, whatever. You'll record. Now you have a salary expense also in the GL. Okay. Now when you prepare P&L, yes, you'll get the ADP payroll expense also in this. If it is connected, it will flow automatically. We'll be transferring. They will transfer that 50 lakhs, this entry from ADP to Oracle GL. Since it is not connected, what we have to do, the business will pass this entry. They will talk to ADP payroll and they will take this accounting entry information, the journal entry we call. Okay, they talk to them, they will provide, hey, this much expense we have as salaries, as this loan, etc., whatever they have, what are the financial transactions they recorded as per ADP payroll, that information they'll share with the GL team, the business. The GL team will pass manual entry. Okay, so this is how primarily like this, or else there could be some adjustments, kind of provisions when you are closing the year, etc., bad debts, sort of like adjustment entries which are required temporary purpose, they will record. So that is the purpose. You may enter the transaction GL, but by default, there is no need of entering the transaction the GL. GL always collect the data from subledger application. Based on that, you can prepare your financial reports like balance sheet or P&L. So that's how it works. Fine. Now, we are going to understand how to pass this kind of manual journals. It could be any reason, doesn't matter. We should aware how to pass manual entries. Reality in AP, if you create invoice, system will create this sort of accounting entry, expense debit, liability credit. That entry will come to GL as a journal entry. As per AP, it is invoice. In invoice, you'll have a supplier information, lot of information you'll have. It's a heavy record. But to prepare the financial reports, you need just simple information. For which company, what account, how much debit credit. That's it. This information only require. As per your chart of accounts, if you have few more segments, yes, that data also will come. But primarily, I'm taking just company and account. You may have a department, you may have project, etc. That details also will come in the debit and credit. So in AP, you will have a complete detail as AP invoice, but you are not going to send complete AP invoice information. You will send only accounting information. Accounting means for which account debit, which account is credit, and which company, how much amount. That information will send from AP to GL, that we call as journal entry. From AP, AR, CM, FA, any application, we send the data to GL, only journal entry, not complete record. The detailed information will be in that same application. Journal entries will be sending to GL. Journal entry means the information like which company, which account is debit, which account is credit, and the 10,000 or whatever the amounts, this all will come to GL so that you can prepare the financial reports. So this is how it works. Now we'll take the case. We want to see how to create the manual journals in the GL. Okay, how to create the manual journals within the GL. If you want to create the manual journals within the GL, okay, you need to give permission to this user. Okay, you need to give permission to this user. Fine. So you have to assign certain roles. Okay, you have to assign certain roles to the user. Say Oracle is offering 5 roles. Even if you assign 3 roles, it is okay, it works. We'll see what roles we have to assign. Now what we are going to do is we are going to assign GL roles to user so that the user will be able to access GL application to perform GL related task. Okay, the user will be able to access GL application to perform GL related tasks, not setups. Try to understand. So user will perform the task, means they will record the business transactions or business related activities they do. So this GL roles, AP roles, AR roles are designed for business users. You can say, in other words, for accountants who are going to work on Oracle Fusion Financials as accountant from that company client side. For those people, these roles are designed. For consultants, which roles Oracle designed already we have seen. IT security manager and application implementation consultant role. Done. We have to assign the GL roles. Okay, you will assign the GL roles to this user, that's cool. But if you want to record the transactions, we need primary ledger. Now, the primary ledger we have to assign to those roles. So within that roles, you'll have a page access, okay, certain privileges. To record the transactions at any cost, you need primary ledger in any application. So we have to assign primary ledger to GL roles. Otherwise, GL roles will be empty. If you assign the role, the role may give access to 10 pages for specific user. You assign one role to one user, the user will be able to access to 10 pages. The 10 pages, what user has to do? User has to record the transaction if required. To record the transactions, we need date. To record the transaction, we have to provide the description of the transaction, details of the transaction, and the amount need to be addressed with currency. This amount currency information, the details of the transaction, and the date related information, everything we have in our primer ledger. If you don't assign primer ledger to GL roles or AP roles or AR roles or anything, just take which we assign directly, which we assign indirectly, we'll come to know. But when you talk about GL, if you don't assign primary ledger to GL roles, within the GL, even user get access to the GL roles, they cannot record the transaction. That means we are allowing the user to create the data transaction, data specific means they'll create the transactions that you can call as a data. They'll create the data. To create the data in the GL application, the primer ledger is required. You have to assign primer ledger to GL roles so that the user will get access to data entry. It may be entry or they may see existing data, whatever it may be. So assigning primer ledger to GL roles means we are going to allow the user to create the transactions or view the transactions. Allow user to create or view transactions in GL. Creating or viewing the transactions means it's all about data. It means simply you can say we are going to give data access to user. Assigning primer ledger to GL roles means we are going to give the data access. With the data access, user can create the transactions, they can view the transaction. Which data access we are giving? Ledger access. With the ledger, you can create the transaction. That means you can create the data. That is the meaning of data access. Okay. Two tasks. One, we have to assign the GL roles to user. For every application, Oracle is delivering. Oracle is providing seeded roles. AP Oracle is providing seeded roles. AR Oracle is providing. FA Oracle is providing cash management. GL, you take any application. For every application, Oracle is providing the seeded roles. Okay, for every application, Oracle is providing seeded roles. Every application, Oracle is providing the seeded roles. So those seeded roles, okay, those seeded roles will help us to have access to that application related functionalities, or you can say simply pages or etc. etc. If you have access to those application related roles, no use, those are empty. Within those pages, if you want to record the transactions, we need access to primer ledger so that we will be able to create the transactions, or else you can view transactions which are already created by using the same primer ledger. So assigning primer ledger to GL roles we call as giving data access to user. Means we are allowing the user to have access to primer ledger, means we are allowing the user to create the transaction. Creating transaction, nothing but creating the data. So we are giving data access. We'll go and see in the system what are the predefined roles Oracle is offering for GL and how to assign. We know how to assign the roles. Reason we assigned already 2 roles to our user. Those are IT security manager and application implementation consultant role. Fine, we'll see that. Go to instance. So we have a user called as LINC. Okay. And for GL, okay, Oracle is providing 5 seeded roles. Oracle is providing 5 seeded roles. We are going to assign those 5 seeded roles to user. Go to navigator. So within the navigator, go to tools. Under tools, we have one task which will navigate us to security console. The name is security console. Click on security console. Tools, security console. So from security console, you can find out your user, query your user, then what are the roles Oracle delivered for GL application, those roles we will assign to the same user. Fine. Now go to users and find out the user. Alt, sorry, INC, right? So just find out user record. Click on INC, click on edit. Okay, click on edit. Now we have only 2 roles. We are going to assign 5 more roles. Click on add role. So search for role called as one second. It is just taking time to fetch the name. Okay, here is the role name, General Accounting Manager. The role name is General Accounting Manager. If you look at this General Accounting Manager, you have 2 copies. The first row in this record, General Accounting Manager, is a name. Below you have some coding kind of name as a code like underscore, etc. So General Accounting Manager, General Accounting Manager. So here it is starting with the code as GL underscore General Accounting Manager job. And here it is starting ORA GL General Accounting Manager 2. What Oracle is doing is, in the test and practice instances, you will see 2 copies. But when you are working for the client, you will see whenever you see 2, within the 2, you have to select which is starting with ORA. Reason, when you are working for client in the client instance, they are not giving these 2 copies, only one they are giving. That is, which starts with ORA. Okay, that's what you have to notice. The roles which are starting with ORA, always you prefer to choose. If you select this within the GL, certain concepts doesn't work. Certain concepts doesn't work. So that's how it is. You ignore all these roles. This is totally different story. These got generated based on the older releases. The older releases, the moment you create your primary ledger will get assigned to these roles. That's how these all are sample primary ledgers Oracle created in the very, very past. I could say before 2017. Okay, that time there was some different logic. Okay, there was different logic. The moment you complete your primary ledger will get assigned to all the GL roles automatically. That's how Oracle automated, and it got failed. That approach got failed, and every client started complaining, hey, my primary ledger is assigned to GL roles, but it is not working properly. The data link was missing. That sort of experience Oracle got from their clients. They completely stopped. They are telling, hey, you do this. So when system is doing, it is going mad, and you assign your primary ledger to your roles. Why we have to assign one primary ledger to all the roles blindly? Those may be required, may not be required as per your business. You take a call. So that's how Oracle stopped the automation of assigning primary ledger to GL roles. Okay, when it was up to release, I think I could say maybe up to 7.8, up to 7.8, that logic was there. Later they stopped. Now we are at release 13, and release 13, Oracle introduced into the market in like long back, but they are keep applying the patches. That's how they are running. Okay, so that's how it is. Like in the very older releases, there is approach like what Oracle followed, creating the roles automatically by mapping to primary ledger. So what you see here with the primary ledger, Australia primary ledger, General Accounting Manager, Belgium primary ledger, General Accounting Manager. This mapping we call as, this record we call as data role. Means this user already got access to this ledger. Means this ledger related transaction can be created. Oracle used to call it as a data roles. Now, finance point of view, there are no data roles. But there is a logic still they have for HCM point of HCM data roles. It's a different story compared to finance. They have a data roles for HCM applications, slightly different from finance. But for finance point of view, they completely stopped because of the experience, the feedback which they got from their clients. So now it is pretty much manual process. You have to assign the role first, then assign your primary ledger to that role. It's a completely manual. In the older releases, the moment you complete the primary ledger, your primary ledger will get assigned to appropriate roles. If it is a GL primary, if it is a primary ledger, those primary ledger need to be assigned to GL roles. It will assign. If it is business unit as per enterprise structure, okay, it will be mapped at your like payables roles, receivables roles, and project costing, project billing roles. That's how automatically system will do the mapping. Yeah. So that's how it works. Okay, fine. So this is what we have to understand. Done. Yep. So here always we prefer to choose which is starting with ORE. For example, you are searching for general accounting manager. Two copies are not there. If two copies are not there, whatever available you have to choose. That's it. But for few roles, two copies they are giving. If you find two copies with the same role name where role code is slightly different, always you prefer to choose which is starting with ORA. You are searching, you have only one role, it doesn't have ORA prefix, then choose the same what Oracle is giving. And another important point, these roles, whatever Oracle is giving, these are seeded. These can be customized, these can be modified. You can copy and you can do some changes. But when you are assigning, make sure you are assigning the exact role to user which is seeded. In general accounting manager, if I see something suffix as one, I should understand somebody modified. But seeded roles you cannot modify. By copying, someone can modify. Okay, make sure you are selecting only Oracle provided seeded role when you are practicing. Later, we will have a session where I will walk through how to create the custom roles by copying or from the scratch. We'll see that. Now, only our focus is what roles are available for GL, which are delivered by Oracle. When you are assigning, if you have multiple copies with the same role name, which one we have to choose? Choose which is starting with ORA if you have a two. If you have only one, you choose no choice there. Choose whatever available. Now we have a two. You have to select second one. General accounting manager. You don't worry about these. You don't see these in your client instance. This instance we are just using for training. When this instance was release 7, release 8, okay, so 5-6 years ago, these got generated with the sample data Oracle provided. Even the versions are keep evolving, the sample data remain as it is. Even our whatever the instance we are using for practice, they will refresh the data which is created by you, but not which is created by Oracle. If you want to use Oracle sample data also, you can use. How to use, we will discuss later. We'll have a separate session to understand those areas of information. For now, our focus is how to set up everything on our own. Now select this role. The role name is General Accounting Manager. Okay, role name is General Accounting Manager. Now you see General Accounting Manager, the role code is starting to RA. Along with that, it is displaying another role also, General Accounting Manager, the suffix is copied in the role name and role code also. This you ignore. Okay, this is not our desired role. Our desired role is this. This is the role we are looking for. Okay, select the role which is purely Oracle provided, seeded, without any customization prefix or suffix. Select, click on add role membership. Now it got assigned. You can see the background, see the bottom of this window, General Accounting Manager, it is assigned. Cool. I'll capture this information into our spreadsheet. So when anyway, you will get access to this spreadsheet. You can use this data for your reference purpose when you are practicing. Hope everybody is capturing everything what we are discussing. If you are just listening, you are not learning. Just listening. If you are writing everything, yes, roadmap is different. Now, next role. So, next role is just search for general accountant. The same case here also, general accountant, 2 copies we have, codes are different. So always we prefer which is starting with ORA. Select general accountant role and click on add role membership, nothing but assign. Simply they can give the name as assign, but they given very technical term, add role membership. Just track it. Next row. CFO role. Chief Finance Officer. Of course, name they give financial officer. Yeah, nothing wrong. So Chief Financial Officer. How many copies you can see? One and only. It is starting with GL. There is no another copy. If you have another copy, then you can look for choice to choose which is starting with ORA. Now we have only one. So no second thought, we have to select as it is. Chief Financial Officer, nothing but CFO in short. Select the CFO role. Okay, select. So select as it is here also. You are searching with this name. Yes, here is the search result as a Chief Financial Officer. Select the same role. Say assign. Assign. In the background, you can notice if you want to check. Is there. Capture it. Capture into our spreadsheet. It will be useful for your reference while you practice by referring this spreadsheet. Next one. You can search for another role called as 1 second, it is taking time to fetch the values. Okay, this is the role, financial analyst. You could see 2 copies. Okay, so one is starting with ORA. Always we prefer to select this. Assign. Make a note. And one more row. Here is the one more row, that is controller. Select controller, select the record, assign. We are done. Okay, these are the 5 seeded roles. Okay, these are the 5 seeded roles Oracle offering. Okay, 1 second. In some instances, okay, it could be client instance or any instance. Some instances, you may not find these 2 roles. Don't worry. These 3 roles are enough. Okay, these 3 roles are enough. Even these 2 roles also enough. These 2 roles will have a more or less full privileges to everything what you have inside of GL. Okay, these are additional based on the roles in the organization. But in every project, we customize the roles. We don't use as it is in any project. All the projects we customize. We'll see how to customize. But before customizing, we have to understand what Oracle is delivering, what Oracle is providing. So this you can name as GL seeded roles, or you can call Oracle delivered roles. Delivered roles means Oracle provided, nothing but seeded. Seeded means which comes along with the product. You don't need to create. Oracle creates and provides as a part of product solution. So successfully we assign the 5 roles to our user. The next task is assigning primary ledger to GL roles. This is some sort of story we have to discuss here. We have to bring one story to understand these points. That we will do in the tomorrow session. It takes time. It is not as simple as we discussed assign. Yeah. We'll discuss that. We'll complete the assignment. We'll pass one manual journal. Then quickly we'll jump into our payables application, and we can just talk about setups, etc., etc. Then once we are ready with the minimal setups for payables, we'll start working on the transaction process. When we start working on the transaction process based on the use case, we may have to perform the additional setups. We'll discuss and we'll set up and we'll test. We'll just keep simulating different use cases within the payables application. Okay, I'm stopping here for today. Okay, please try to complete the same from your end. Doesn't matter more or less or little task. Don't postpone it. Whatever we complete in the class today, that you complete from your side, so that you will be on track. You can understand and you can answer to my questions also if I ask. Yeah, that's very important. Very simple. In session, sometimes definitely I'll be asking the questions. Who are answering, it's open secret. They are on the track. Others are just attending. That's it. They may have a great plans to practice later, but 99% that won't happen in many people case. When sessions are happening, you be active to practice and go through writing all points into your notebook. Everything you have to copy. Your notebook should become big asset for you. Okay, go through all the points. Don't leave anything. Don't leave anything in the video itself, in the sheet itself. You capture into your book and you read it. Okay, use the same terminology. Don't use your own English to represent what we are discussing here. The terminology also you have to use the same. Whatever we are using, these terminologies are aligned with our application, this product. The same terminology you have to use. Understanding in one way and presenting in the different way, different terminology doesn't work. Okay, adapt the same terminology what we are using throughout our course or this each and every session. So use as it is. Okay, if you are able to say we have 5 roles in GL, that is not a great information. What roles we have exactly, you should be able to spell the full name also. That's what we call as real learning. So my request is, since you subscribed, invested your money, you have to invest your time. When you are investing your time, how to invest? While running the class itself, you write everything. Don't make a plan. You will do great job of completing your practice during the class. There are few people which I have seen. Whenever I just assign these roles, they will be assigning the roles. Maybe great task for them. Reality, that is not great. They are wasting they are killing their learning. They have to look at that point, what I am explaining, so that they can think through, so that they can come up with their questions. That will become real learning. Completing the task in the dummy approach doesn't make any sense. If somebody is practicing parallelly, don't practice. Attend the class as how we should attend. After attending the class, you practice. Nobody will stop. Of course, you may not have a time, but that is up to you. And my request is, write everything. Write all the points. Okay, write all the points. Don't leave anything. You may understand, but still write it. Write all the points into your notebook and read multiple times. Read multiple times. If you have an environment, you give the presentation. You have environment, give the presentation to others. So you can give the presentation at your home. Okay. So to your friends or family members, nothing wrong. I am presenting to you to make you to understand. You give the same presentation to others. You stand and give the presentation. You may give one presentation like, hey, I'm going to talk about what is chart of accounts. You may give one presentation, how to create the chart of accounts. I'm going to talk about, say, if you want to create without referring the notebook. That means you have to read multiple times. Read multiple times till you memorize. Once you are ready with the content, once you store the data in your database, in your mind, then it would be ready to use by you. Then start giving the presentation. If you are struggling with your presentation, still you have to work on reading. Okay, the time what you invested for reading, that is not enough. Read. Okay, and then give presentation to somebody. Okay, when you are giving presentation, if you are struggling, you have to go back and read it. If you feel comfortable with the presentation, still you are not okay. Okay, you may be comfortable, others may not be comfortable with your presentation. Try to bring the improvement in your presentation. Give the presentations and don't ignore practice. I don't recommend practicing 100 times to get a great confidence on the system. 1 or 2 times, minimum 1 time practice so that you can feel and you can experience the system hands-on. But the key majority task is writing and reading and giving presentation if you have environment. If you don't have environment, create environment. You can give presentation to anybody. Okay, take the feedback from them, take negative feedback. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Then practice. No need to practice 100 times. Many people, they'll practice, they'll feel they're doing wonderful, great jobs. No, not required. So when you're in the project also, your great practice may not help you in all the ways, all the times. So what content you read and what you are able to express, that is very, very important. Okay, first capture, then read multiple times, give some presentations. Okay, give some presentations or discuss it, sit and discuss, nothing wrong. You have to experience, you have to exercise with the content. When you are going to talk about chart of accounts, primary ledger, there should be great confidence from your side and there should be wonderful flow of data what you are speaking. That only you can bring by speaking multiple times, by giving presentation or discussions, etc., etc. And practice max 2 times. Don't practice more than 2 times. Instances may go down and all. Yes, you do the basic setups and directly jump into where you stopped. Okay, because of by claiming instances, etc. If you are practicing multiple times, no use. You are wasting your time. Okay, you have to practice minimum 1 time. If you have a good amount of time in your hand, practice 2 times. If you are practicing third time, you are doing utterly wrong job. Okay, you have to practice on this, more on reading, more on giving presentation and speaking, discussions, etc., etc. When you talk about presentation, I just suggest you to give presentation, 3 variety of presentations. One is conceptual, theory. Okay, theory presentations, setup related presentations, process related presentations. Give these 3 variety of the presentations so that you will become strong. So we not that experience with the process, but we experience with theory and setups. Now you can give the presentation on chart of accounts. How to give theory? Hey, you can stand somewhere and you can sit. You can explain to somebody saying that now I'm going to talk about what is a chart of accounts. When you record that, this is how you have to give. I'm giving some demo for you. So when you talk about chart of accounts, so this is mandatory component in the system in order to record the transactions. So the chart of accounts is always we design based on the company reporting requirements. To meet the company reporting requirements, these points we discussed. I am not going to generate any new data. What we discussed, that only I'm just framing again as a presentation. The guys who are effectively focusing and spending time, hope they are okay with this data already. So to meet the company financial reports requirements, we design the chart of accounts. When we design the chart of accounts, so we have to consider few points. The chart of accounts we can create with the max 2 segments, minimum or 2 segments. The 2 segments are balancing segment and a natural account segment. Typically, when we design the chart of accounts for in the real world for clients, we may come across the segment requirements like 7 or 8 or 9, not more than 10. If somebody using 10, more than 10, yes, that is okay, but it may not be great practice. So most on and average, we create the chart of accounts in the real world with the 7, 8, 9 segments. And even Oracle is giving 30, there is no need. And when you talk about chart of accounts, so we have to follow certain practices, best practices. So whatever we discuss, we have to talk about that. So go for only one balancing segment in the chart of accounts and make sure so you are mapping each balancing segment value with one business unit as best practice and try to reduce the number of segments usage, create parent and child relation, always think about future growth of the company and accommodate future segments or call them as a spare segments also. You can call a spare. And these are the intercompany. Consider if there is any intercompany transactions. For better reporting capabilities related intercompany, include intercompany segment also in the chart of accounts. So these are the points we have to highlight. Okay, so this is how we have to talk about what does it mean by chart of account. You completed theory part. Now you have to talk about setups. So in order to define the chart of accounts in the system, first we have to create value sets. Okay, value sets like containers to maintain the values. So you can talk in the initial presentation, you may talk about the task name also. To create the value sets, we have a task called as manage chart of account value sets. By using this task, we can create the chart of value set. And in order to create value set, we have to specify key information. I'm not asking you to talk each and every field which we touched. You can talk about when you create the value set, we select validation type as independent, value data type is character, value subtype is text. We specify the length of the value set. So length will help us to maintain the specific segment related code. Okay, specific segment related code. Okay, so you can just talk about those few points. Once we create the value sets for each and every segment, then we have to create the chart of account structure. To create the structure, we have a task called as manage chart of account structures. By navigating to the structure, we can create the chart of accounts. We can create the chart of accounts. Okay. Yeah. Fine. So we'll go to that page and we'll search. There we'll find accounting flex field. Within that accounting flex field, we create the chart of account structure. There we'll provide the name and we'll provide the description. And within that, we create the segments. When you create the segment, for each segment, we assign the relevant value set and we'll set the sequence of segmenting, say segment, and also we assign the labels. If it is the company segment, we assign the primary balancing segment label. If it is a department, we assign the cost center segment label. If it is account, we assign the natural account segment label. If it is intercompany, we assign the intercompany segment label. This is how we have to map respective labels to segments. For each segment, we have to assign the value set. Once you create the values chart of account structure, we have to create chart of account structure instance. Throw some light on it. What is that? You don't need to explain too much. So chart of account structure instance is a copy of chart of account structure. Structure directly we cannot use when you create the primary ledger. So that is the reason we have to make a copy of the chart of account structure as instance. So when you copy, we have to set all the segments as required into our instance from structure. After creating the structure, if it is a manual process, we have to add the segment values. And every segment will define the segment values and that you can talk about it. So this is how, like, whatever you are doing in the system, so the other person knows how to create the chart of account. Your talk should be able to create image in their mind what you are talking about the system. Okay, and process we not yet experienced. Once we start working on the transaction process, I'll talk about how to present. This is how you have to do. You have to invest good amount of time. If you are investing time only to attend the classes, nothing you can take out of it. Generally, my experience is if 10 people will attend the classes, okay, maybe 1 or 2 people will take the benefit out of those classes. The remaining people, few people, maybe the people who are attending these classes, their background may be EBS. The guys from EBS, they already experienced, just they need the flavor of Fusion. For them, it is okay. If they are not from EBS as a finance consultants, taking benefit out of this course is a bit challenging if you don't invest the time. If you don't follow all these, it's very, very difficult. If you are attending the classes, nothing will happen. You will complete the batch. You will complete the course. You have to do parallelly. Don't make a plan to do all this after completing the course or by finding one good day. Okay, do parallelly. Today, whatever I completed, you complete from your end. But you have to spend more than the class. Whatever. If you are attending this class, maybe you have to spend 4 or 5 hours per day. Then really you can take benefit out of this. Okay, minimum 4 or 5 days. That is not enough. If you don't have minimum, if you have, spend good amount of time. Be on the same all the time. If you are working, different story. If you are not working full time, you be on this learning. Okay, writing everything, reading multiple time, giving presentation, practicing initial stages, again cycling activities, again read, again present, give theory, just read the theoretically, read setup point of, read process point of. Whatever you are learning, you just think through. It's not like blindly you see, you do it. Anything you do, please think through, analyze the things, what you are doing, what you did, where it is coming, why it is coming, where it is giving, Oracle given, or we created. So if something is not coming, where is the trigger point? This all you have to think through. Okay, think through, raise questions yourself. Okay, how, why? Because when you are working as a consultant, your job would be asking the questions more than doing. So if you don't ask yourself, tomorrow when they will ask you questions, you cannot answer. Yeah, fine. So these are very, very important. Okay, write all this. Don't go with the fancy approach. You will write something in your laptop. Okay, you write very limited. You have a pen and paper, you will write maximum extent. You can draw something in the spreadsheet and all what you can draw. Okay, you'll go with your comfort zone. So don't use any kind of digital kind of documentation. Completely depend on the physical documentation. Use your big size book and pen and write each and everything. Write each, whatever I do, whatever I speak. Sometimes people are asking the questions. Very nice. Whatever I answer to those questions, write it. That's a good information. That's all about Oracle Fusion Finance. Write it. Everything. It should be like transcript for the entire session. That's how you have to write. And you have to follow the same terminology, whatever I'm using the classes. You have to follow this approach of writing, reading multiple times, giving presentation, practicing 2 times enough. I suggest if you have time, do multiple times. But never set expectation, will become expert with the practice, not required also. Okay. So the most of the time we'll be talking about subject, so that you can build with the reading and giving presentations and discussing about the content, etc. Yeah, focus, make a plan, make this as your roadmap for this learning. Otherwise, just you will complete. Many people already completed, no use. That's how it is, right? So we are done for today. On these points, any questions from anyone, please? No.